They said if we're being ignored by the Democrats and we're being ignored by the Republicans, then we can't bring ourselves to vote for it.
But they weren't being ignored.
They were.
Following Trump's illegal and disgusting announcement that he intends to ethnically cleanse Gaza, liberals are now jumping over themselves to blame Arab and Muslim voters for not voting for Kamala Harris when those same liberals spent the entire campaign arguing that Gaza was not an issue. So I'm going to break down some of the reactions and the left's reactions to what a lot of liberals, not just random people online, but people with large followings, people that have worked on Democratic campaigns, people on television, the reaction to what those individuals are saying. Because it has been just wild to watch where a lot of liberals right now are gloating that Trump has made this announcement when, if they cared at all about the actual issue, they would have been on this well before Donald Trump had made this announcement. So I'm going to first show you that very announcement, discuss a little more about it before I get into some of the reactions to it. Here is Trump side by side with Netanyahu. Wait for the clip coming up, by the way. If you haven't seen it. It's a wild one, but let me play this one first, and we'll get deeper into this.
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it, too. We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site, level the site and get rid of the destroyed buildings, level it out, create an economic development that will supply unlimited numbers of jobs and housing for the people of the area.
How do you envision living there?
I envision the world, people living there, the world's people. I think you'll make that into an international, unbelievable place. I think the potential in the Gaza Strip is unbelievable.
Donald Trump looking at the Gaza Strip as a resort opportunity. It's really hard to put into words how disgusting this is, but let me also acknowledge just how clearly illegal all of this is as well. Common Dreams writing here, the forced transfer of a population of an occupying power is a war crime, according to Article 49 of the Fourth Geneva Convention, under which Israel's settler colonies in the occupied West Bank are also illegal. Going on right here, Francesca Albanese, the UN Special Rapporteur for the occupied Palestinian territory, said at a press conference on Thursday that Trump's proposal is, quote, completely irresponsible. Even the act of floating ethnic cleansing in Gaza amounts to incitement to commit forced displacement, which is an international crime. The international community is made up of 193 states, she added, and this is the time to give the U.S. what it has been looking for, isolation. And I completely agree. He also went on to say here, I'm not going to play more Trump clips, but I can link some of these below the video. He went on to say, so in response to how many people need to leave Gaza, all of them, probably 1.7 million, maybe 1.8 million, they'll be settled in areas where they can live a beautiful life. So Ben Collins, or as he goes by, Tim Onion, of The Onion here, put this out on Blue Sky. 5 years ago this week is when they published this satirical article. Kushner promises Israel plan will relocate all Palestinians to generous swath of Mediterranean Sea. It's a little crazy how accurate Onion headlines are becoming, because there is no space for satire anymore, because the extreme of the extreme continues to happen. Worth sharing this as well. Look at Netanyahu smiling as Trump is discussing this.
Why would they want to return? The place has been hell. It's been one of the meanest, toughest places on earth.
Worth pausing there just to remind everybody why it's been hell. The guy sitting right there, dropping bombs on innocent civilians for over a year. And to be clear, well before October 7th as well. The occupying force of the Israeli government and the displacement of Palestinians from their homes, the ongoing settlements, and then, of course, the ongoing destruction over the past, year and a half. This is why. So it's such a bizarre point to try and make. Oh, the place is hell. Yeah, because of the Israeli government that you have been funding and defending in this genocide.
And right now, I've seen every picture from every angle, better than if I were there. And nobody can live there. You can't live there. So if we can build,
Yeah. Again, why can't people live there? It's hard to know what to say. But then you see moments like this. This was the clip I was referring to earlier, that you have to see this. I don't think Trump has even ever held a chair for one of his wives. And here he is holding and pushing in a chair for Netanyahu, his real king. It, it is just amazing. So worth bringing this up again, as I brought up many times before the election, the pro-Israel donor with $100 million plan to elect Trump. So Miriam Adelson, the wife or the widow of Sheldon Adelson, and a rabbi close to her, rabbi and longtime friend of the couple, said he believed Dr. Adelson supported annexation and considered so-called land for peace deals to actually be land for war. Do I believe that Miriam supports the creation of a Palestinian state? Absolutely not. This is what concerns Trump. Money. These are the only people he'll listen to, people that give him money. So whether it's Elon Musk, whether it's Miriam Adelson, this is where he gets his policy ideas from. And now that there are really no guardrails on him, you know, you could argue there are more guardrails in 2016 in his first administration. Now that it's just pure, it's the corruption is just, it's in front of your face. This is, you know, not surprising considering this is who he is. So a couple of reactions I want to get to before I get to the liberal reaction and the left roasting those liberals. Jagmeet Singh here, NDP leader in Canada, writing, Gaza belongs to Palestine and no one else. Trump's threats are utter madness. They violate every international law, destabilize the region, threaten the ceasefire. Canada must stand up to this forcefully. Gaza is not for sale. It belongs to Palestinians. So good statement there from Jagmeet Singh. And Saudi Arabia appears to have higher human rights standards than the U.S. Saudi Arabia will not establish ties with Israel without the establishment of a Palestinian state, the foreign ministry said in a statement following the Trump-Netanyahu press briefing. When Saudi Arabia is outdoing you on human rights, it's time to reanalyze what you're doing. So let me get to this clip here. This is foreign policy analyst Rula Jibril on CNN discussing what this is.
I mean, clearly it's an official foreign policy of the United States, the illegal occupation of a sovereign land, ethnic cleansing, which constitute on both counts, crimes against humanity. I mean, maybe Donald Trump doesn't remember, but July this year, the International Court of Justice actually talked about Gaza and issued an order. And in the order says that Gaza is still occupied, that occupation is illegal, that Israel needs to end the occupation both of the West Bank and in Gaza. By the way, the other piece, he said he will decide on the West Bank next week, which means we don't know next week if he will allow Israel to annex it or not. I mean, in 30 years, I've been covering foreign policy. I never seen a incoherent, lunatic proposal or proposition as such. He just put a target on every serviceman back to 9 because the region is on fire already and he's setting the whole region further on fire.
I think that last point is worth remembering as I get into these reactions from liberals. The region was on fire already. Why? Because you had the Biden administration enabling, funding, supporting, and defending an ongoing genocide being committed by the Israeli government. Defending them against charges being laid by the ICJ, the ICC, human rights groups worldwide. The ongoing defense of the mass atrocities has led to the point now where Trump can take it even further into just outright ethnic cleansing. So let me get to the first liberal that thought this was a good opportunity to dunk on Muslim and Arab voters. So Brian Krasenstein, who I think after reading this tweet needs a couple extra Ks in his name, writes here, to Muslims who sat out the election because Kamala Harris was too pro-Israel. How do you feel now that the guy who beat Harris by a sliver just called for what appears to be the ethnic cleansing of 1.7 million Muslims in Gaza and for the U.S. to take over the Gaza Strip? Many of those people, many of those voters had family in Gaza that were killed by the genocide. Look, I'm going to get to my clear position on all of this in a bit here. I wrote it in a tweet because there are points that I want to make sure I get across and don't forget. But I argued before the election that you should vote. Look, I'm an outsider. I can't vote in the US. But as an outsider, ensure Trump doesn't win. I argued that again and again. I argued that Trump was worse. I showed the money he was being given by people like Mary Madelson. I made sure to make the threat clear. But the onus is on the candidates. Kamala Harris did not address this issue properly. Didn't even allow a pro-Harris Palestinian politician, who's a state politician, didn't even allow that person to speak at the DNC. Even though she was pro-Kamala Harris, was going to argue to vote for Kamala Harris, but because she was Palestinian, the Harris campaign thought it was too risky to let her speak. I'm going to get to data later showing just how they completely botched this by not addressing this properly, but not having a real response to the genocide, how it likely led to them losing the campaign. And again, that is on the campaign. You can make all the arguments you want about Trump being worse, and I made those arguments. But when it comes down to it, the onus is on the campaigns to win the voters. So let me get to another liberal reaction. Alex Cole, I don't know who this person is, but big following. Online, a lot of Democrats following this guy. The people that were protesting Kamala Harris about the Palestinians look like complete idiots. Some good reactions to this one. So Scarlet Red here tweeting out, yeah, history is always really unkind to the people who protested genocides. Kate Willett tweeting out, this is why I think the left liberal coalition is permanently broken. The lesson that too many liberals learned from this election is support mass murder harder, when in fact the exact opposite is needed, not only for human decency, but to win an election ever again. This guy, again, just keeps putting out gems. I have zero sympathy for the Palestinian Americans who stayed home or voted for Trump. You get what you deserve. Yara replying here, what Trump said about Gaza is in this press conference, was made possible by a 15-month-long genocide led by Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Simone Sanders, who has worked on Democratic campaigns, I believe is an MSNBC host now, putting this out. This one's a little more coded, but it's clear what she's saying. I think now it's very appropriate to reiterate that elections have consequences. Katie Halper replying to this, saying, which is why Kamala Harris standing by Joe Biden's genocide in Gaza when the base wanted her to abandon it was so irresponsible. It is like, it is just, it's insane to see people so embedded in politics not understand that you have to win the voters over. That's your job. You can argue till you're blue in the face about how the other guy's worse. At the end of the day, when you are sitting by, enabling and supporting a genocide and saying you will do nothing different, what other result do you expect? And at the same time, a lot of these same people argued that, we'll get to Bakari Sellers in a second here, argued that, this not even an issue. Gaza, not even really a big issue. Who cares? And then turns out, oh, actually, no, it was a big issue. And now you're criticizing people that didn't vote for it. So here's my tweet. Again, I'm reading myself here because I feel like I may miss some of the points I made here. But I replied to Sanders here saying, to attempt to put any blame on voters who didn't want to vote for an administration that was actively funding the murder of innocent people, in many cases their own family members, is disgusting. Many of us argued to vote against Trump even while Biden was actively funding and defending a genocide. We knew Trump would be worse. But the reality of elections is it's on the candidate to reach people where they're at. And Kamala Harris failed miserably despite the ongoing warnings from groups like Uncommitted that she was losing people. It's not as if this came out of nowhere and the campaign was surprised that there was a lot of discontent around her desire to not do anything on the issue of Gaza. There was a lot of warnings, including from groups like Uncommitted, but human rights groups, just data after data, lots of polling before the election showcasing that people's minds on this issue had shifted dramatically, where it wasn't even Democrats that were against what Israel was doing, but it was voters as a whole, including Republican voters, didn't think it made any sense. And still, they stuck to the script. So, a lot of posts like this. How's that uncommitted vote going for you? Jesse Hawken replying here saying some Democrats enjoy being losers because it gives them a chance to get really smug instead of looking inward. This is worth highlighting. In case you forgot, here was Kamala Harris's position on Gaza before the election.
Would you do anything differently? For example, would you withhold some U.S. weapons shipments to Israel? That's what a lot of people on the progressive left want you to do.
Let me be very clear. I'm unequivocal and unwavering in my commitment to Israel's defense and its ability to defend itself. And that's not going to change. Let's get the hostages out. Let's get the ceasefire done.
But no change in policy in terms of arms and so forth.
No, we have to get a deal done.
No change in policy. Still supported selling arms to Israel as they were actively committing a genocide. I cut out a lot of the fat in that clip because a lot of nothing was said. You can go watch the full thing below the video. But in terms of actual policy, Kamala Harris did not waver from where Joe Biden was. Now, you could argue, well, she's the vice president, right? How could she possibly waver from where Biden is? There is so much insanity going on within the Trump administration right now that the idea of a VP, changing her position from where her president is, seems so minuscule that, of course, why couldn't she do it? Look at all the crap Trump has done as president right now that he can't do, that he shouldn't be allowed to do. Why can't a VP during a campaign where she is running for president do the thing that's right and condemn a genocide? So miss me with these ridiculous arguments about how, she can't possibly do it. I understand where that's coming from. That's coming from the traditional way of viewing things. And in some way before the election, I argued that in a way where I didn't know what her real position was because I didn't think that she could actually vocalize it as the vice president. But looking at what the kind of crap Trump's getting away with, no, the old rules are out. If you're VP and you differ with your president and you're running for president and you differ with the person that you're working for while you're campaigning, then you should be able to vocalize that. Now, I'll get to some more reactions before I get to Bakari Sellers. This from Bell. Right now, Dearborn is trending because liberals are gloating about the continuation of a genocide under Trump, the same genocide that they downplayed or dismissed under Biden, and the same genocide that Harris pledged to keep arming and funding if she had won. Jason writing on Gaza, why is it so difficult for so many of you to simply say that Biden facilitated a genocide and Trump now wants to commit ethnic cleansing? Are you that politically robotic that you can't even tell the truth? I loathe Trump, but Biden's immoral actions helped usher him in. Ariana Jasmine writing, pointing fingers at Muslim people is way easier than blaming white people for voting Republican since the 1950s. It is crazy to see Democratic operatives or whoever within the Democratic Party or influencers try and put any blame on marginalized communities for issues that they cared about when the vast majority of white people vote Republican. Why don't you just spend your time criticizing white people then? If that's the real issue, it's very bizarre that they keep doing this instead of actually trying to appeal to the voters that they are instead getting angry at. So let's get to Bakari Sellers. So let me just play this and then I'll get to the reaction. There's someone on the panel that reacts to it that I want to play as well. But check this out.
Can I just read this statement from the co-chair of the Uncommitted movement? It was put out tonight. I feel sad and angry and scared for our communities. For months, we warned about the dangers of Trump at home and abroad, but our calls largely went unheard. Trump's illegal calls for ethnic cleansing are horrific. But as on so many issues, Democrats had a chance to persuade voters. They were better than the alternative, and they blew it.
They sound ridiculous. That statement is frustrating. That statement is ill-timed. That statement is petty. I really would call it what I want to call it, but my mom's watching the show. For me, it's if you actually voted one way or withheld your vote, you should own it. There were two choices in this campaign. It was extremely clear. You had Kamala Harris going forward, who recognized that Hamas has no place in governing Palestine, but she also knew, or Gaza, but she also knew that the Palestinian people had the right to human dignity. She also knew that Israel wanted safety and security, deserved that, had the right to defend itself. And we would have been in a much better situation. There was not a question about ethnic cleansing if Kamala Harris would have been the president of the United States.
All right, I'm going to get to Josh Rogan's response on the panel because it's really good, but I have to bring up what Bakari Sellers was saying before the election. Sellers said he thought the war in Gaza could affect Mr. Biden's chances in some states like Michigan, but that he did not think it would be a major national issue for voters come November. Fast forward. Poll shows Gaza was a top issue for Biden 2020 voters who cast a ballot for someone besides Harris. So the Institute for Middle East Understanding Policy Project, as well as YouGov, did this or put together this data, finding that 29% of voters nationally who voted for Biden 2020 and cast a ballot for someone besides Kamala Harris in 2024 say ending Israel's violence in Gaza was the top issue affecting their vote choice, with the economy a close second at 24%. When Biden 2020 voters cast a ballot for someone besides Harris in 2024 were asked which one of the following issues was most important in deciding your vote, they selected the top: ending Israel's violence in Gaza, then the economy, then Medicare and Social Security, immigration and border security, healthcare, abortion policy, and don't know. So there's a lot more data in this that showcases how important the issue of Gaza was for voters in the election, both with people that voted for somebody else or people that didn't vote at all. Yet, people like Bakari Sellers, many others, were arguing before the election that Kamala Harris didn't really have to worry about this issue. And this was during a time where, this is back in March, almost a year ago, majority in U.S., not just Democrats, the majority of voters in the U.S. now disapprove of Israeli action in Gaza. And then there's a great piece here from Peter Beinart on November 7th. Democrats ignored Gaza and brought down their party. And he brings up even more data in that as well. And worth mentioning before I get to the reaction to Sellers, Waleed Shahid writing, Bakari Sellers should probably have to disclose his ties to AIPAC and its donors anytime he disingenuously speaks on this issue. So, new PAC, backed by Bakari Sellers, plans to spend $1 million to unseat Rashida Tlaib. Bakari Sellers has been someone who, again, before the election or during the campaign, was not being honest about what was going on in Gaza and the Democratic administration's support of a genocide. Let me get to Josh Rogan's response because it is fantastic.
I have to totally disagree with you because I spent many weeks talking to Muslim community leaders and activists and a lot of my friends in the Muslim community, a lot of them in swing states, and they all said the same thing. They said, if we're being ignored by the Democrats and we're being ignored by the Republicans, then we can't bring ourselves to vote for it.
But they weren't being ignored.
They were. Kamala Harris said many things that were right, but she didn't do anything. And for her to preside over a policy that ended up in their families getting killed and then asking them to vote for them was something that they couldn't do.
But now the question is,
you can't talk down to the Muslim community and tell them that, oh, you didn't do what's in your best interest. They know what's in their best interest.
But now we're talking about ethnic cleansing. We're talking about 2 million people being displaced. So they
knew what the risks were, and they made a decision because their calculation, if you're interested at all, was that they have to punish the Democratic Party so that the next time this happens, because they've been through so many atrocities, that the Democratic Party, the only one that has a chance of respecting them.
Do you understand that is divorced from political reality?
I'm saying we can listen to the Muslim community or we can talk at them.
This is two different worldviews. One that believes that voters should vote for me regardless of what I do or say, and the other that understands that it is on the candidate, on the campaigns to appeal to people. Which side are you on? Because to me, one is very clearly set in reality, and the other is just in fairy tale land. Because you can't expect people to come out to vote for you when you are supporting a policy that is actively killing innocent lives, including many being their own family. that should be clear and obvious to most people. But it appears to be a foreign idea to people like Bakari Sellers and other Democratic operatives that continue to defend the lack of action by the Biden administration and the lack of change in policy from the Kamala Harris campaign that ultimately led to their defeat.